Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex. And with the custom gear unequip event starting in just a few short hours, I wanted to go ahead and do another top 10 ranking of the best characters, the 10 best characters in my opinion, as of right now, for each of the 10 most popular CTPs. Now, standard PSA here, this is just my opinion. You can go ahead and put whatever CTP on whatever character that you want. This is just for people who want to maximize their output and really get the most value out of these CTPs for these top meta characters. Also, second thing, keep in mind, not all of the CTPs that are being ranked in their base form. You can absolutely use Rage in its base form, and Energy in its base form, and Judgment in its base form, and Insight. But then there are other CTPs that have to be reforged in order to be good, like Regeneration, Refinement, Authority, Destruction, and Greed. Okay? And then nobody likes Transcendence and Patience, let's just be honest. But yeah, keep in mind, so 2 CTPs we just throw in the garbage. 5 CTPs have to be reforged, and then there's 3 CTPs that you can just use as is, and those are generally speaking the best CTPs for PvE: Rage, Energy, and Judgment. So let's start off the list with Insight here, the only CTP that is not yet reforgeable. Now, this list almost never changes because the best supports in the game almost never change. So we go from Wave and White Fox all the way down to Valkyrie and Proxima. There is a bit of a change. I dropped a couple of characters. I dropped Cyclops in order to add both Morgan Le Fay and Shuri. Morgan Le Fay is obvious, but it's also a seasonal uniform, so I understand why you don't have her. But Shuri is going to confuse a lot of players because they're going to be like, Alex, I thought you said Shuri was really good for PvE content, and she is very good. The problem is that for very high-end accounts, and you probably already know this if you're a high-end account, but there's basically just not enough insights to go around for all of the metas that you need to buff, and the issue becomes you either need to give an insight to Valkyrie or Shuri. So that's why they're both on this list together. The thing is that if you give it to Valkyrie, then your female combat ABX scores will decline. So you have this sort of difficult decision to make, but otherwise the CTP of Insight is pretty straightforward, and it does not change very much at all. For Patience and Transcendence, I'm really not going to spend much time talking about them because the list hasn't changed. These CTPs are not good. 9 times out of 10, you're better off just saving these CTPs and using them to reforge other CTPs rather than reforging them together and using them on a character. That being said, I do have a Mighty Transcendence in my inventory that I chose specifically for testing purposes, so I will do a couple of videos on that in the future to give you guys, well, soon actually, to give you guys an updated list on whether or not that is actually any good. Next up, we have Greed. This is one of the CTPs that has to be reforged. It has to be reforged with the effect, and the effect that you want to reforge it for is Ambush. Ambush ignores the enemy's damage decrease, so this is a PvP effect, and it also stops you from taking reflect damage. So this is very good for countering characters with very high damage reduction, like Carnage with Agent Venom, Jean Grey, Gore with a brilliant CTP of Authority. It's also good for countering characters who reflect, like Emma, Luke Cage, Destroyer, Silver Surfer, that sort of thing. But it has to be reforged. I will say this again because I always get this question. Can I just give a regular CTP of Greed to Jean Grey? No, you cannot. It has to be reforged. Okay, and it has to have the ambush effect. Okay, now that we got that clear, this is what the list looks like. A big shakeup here. We added Jean Grey, we added Carnage, we added Captain America. Captain America is probably the iffiest one on this list, but the idea here is you're just doing a huge burst of damage at the beginning to kill your enemy, so you do require enough sustainability. So you can see all the characters on this list, they either have a revive, they have the immortality artifact, or they have very, very high base HP and base defense. The only exception to this list is Black Widow, that I just explained on the top 10 here. But Black Widow gets away with that because of her dodge on her tier 3, on her artifact, and on her tier 4 ability. So yeah, the Greed one is a bit tricky to use. It charges up as you get hit. So it's you got to be able to take a hit in order to proc it, but it can be used to very great effect because of that ambush ability. Okay? Moving on to the next one we have here is the Egg. And the Egg refinement got a massive upgrade with this vitality ability. Again, just like the Greed, you have to reforge it. Put your 2 eggs together, make yourself an omelet. However, when you make the omelet, it's actually pretty good. It recovers 15% of your HP every second for 5 seconds. That's not bad at all. So you can give any character access to healing. And the vitality ability, if you click on it, it also gives you guard break and super guard break immunity, which is really, really good. So yeah, the egg can be used. It's best used, in my opinion, on characters that already have guard break immunity or who can access guard break immunity through a passive. So in Carnage's case, he has it on his passive. So does Adam and Mr. Sinister and Jean Grey. But then you have characters like Black Dwarf and Supergiant. Black Dwarf has guard break immunity, and he gives it to the members of the Black Order. So Supergiant can access it through Black Dwarf. The other characters on this list who don't have guard break immunity, like Destroyer Emma and Luke Cage, they are here because they are reflect pylons. A pylon is something that doesn't move, but it has a very powerful effect. And that's basically what they do. They're not there to do damage. They're not there to like actually hit. They're just there to reflect. Emma is maybe the only exception here because she has a really good third skill counterattack. But the idea is if they can heal more damage than they're taking, i.e. not die, they're just going to reflect all the way to hell, right? This doesn't work in every instance with iframes, but otherwise it does work. And so that's the list for egg. I love the egg now. I think it's a really good CTP as far as like making quirky builds. So I would encourage you to try it out. But yes, it has to be reforged. And I do have a couple of eggs in my inventory. So I will be making more content on that in the coming weeks and months in order to show you guys the true power of the egg. We did one for Carnage, but I want to do even more. Up next, we have the CTP of Judgment. This one does not need to be reforged, although reforging it with the type enhancement effect, or whatever it's called, does add to your damage. This one got a pretty good shakeup. Actually, not a pretty good shakeup. We only added 2 new characters to this list. We added Namor at the very tippy top, and then Jean Grey here at 3rd. The reason why I didn't add Jean Grey higher is because we're still not sure where she lands as far as value of best CTPs for her. I think I've narrowed my list down pretty carefully to those 4 that I mentioned, you know, Rage and Judgment for PvE, and then Authority and Greed for PvP. But the egg might still make an appearance in PvP. We don't know. Otherwise, the list is basically the same. These CTPs are only given to characters that have elemental damage. So it's not going to work on Captain America with his newest uniform. It would work on Captain America with his old Phoenix Force uniform, but it doesn't carry over. It's not going to work on, you know, Punisher's uniform. It's not going to work on Hulk's uniform, for example. I still get this question a lot, which is kind of bizarre. People don't understand how the Judgment CTP works, but I just wanted to let you guys know that before we move on to the CTP of Authority. CTP of Authority, like all other PvP CTPs, has to be reforged. It's not going to work very well if you don't reforge it, and you're aiming for that steel option, that option that decreases damage received. So this is a very good CTP to stack up with characters who are very tanky already, because you can stack up to like 95% damage reduction, and then you have that thing where the enemy's dealing 1 and 2 and 3 damage to you, which is hilariously demoralizing to see that when your characters are basically wet noodles hitting the enemy. As far as the list goes, we do see a lot of new faces. Gore right at the top is amazing with a reforged Authority. So hard to kill. Thanos is still here, but then we also have the additions of both Jean Grey and Carnage. All PvP powerhouses really on the first line. The exception being Blue Dragon. We just haven't seen enough of her, but I do think she is good. The problem is that you're then missing out. I think you're missing out on penetration, so you sort of have to swap one for the other, sacrificing defenses for penetration or penetration for defenses. But otherwise, the list is fairly straightforward. You're just making very good PvP characters super hard to kill as long as they can survive. Up next, we have Destruction. Now, Destruction is the only PvE CTP that has to be reforged, right? Rage, Judgment, and Energy do not need to be reforged to be good. Destruction does need to be reforged, and you need to hit the Strike proc, as you can see there. Now, as powerful as the Strike proc is, and it increases damage dealt to boss types, I do feel like the CTP of Destruction is losing its luster. It's sort of not as good as it used to be, and it's not as popular as it used to be either. That's why I've augmented this list with a Phantom second place character. And the reason why I put that character there is because there just aren't that many there aren't that many characters that utilize this the best who can't just use other CTPs better, right? And so what I'm trying to say is, like, yeah, sure, you could get a Mighty Destruction and give it to Black Bolt. Sure, you could do that. why not just give him a rage? It's half the number of CTPs. Well, maybe you don't have any rages and you have lots of destructions, yes, but you sort of see the conundrum here, right? This costs twice as many CTPs as energy, judgment, or rage, and in a lot of cases, it's not even as good as these other CTPs for specific content, right? So the cost, the barrier to entry is really what's hurting the CTP right now, and the effect of it is not really that much better than these other CTPs. I think this CTP is hurting a lot because of Rage's dominance. That's part of the reason, I think. But maybe we'll see a resurgence, or maybe I'm just undervaluing it. I don't know. But yeah, I did add to this list. We already had Blue Dragon. I did add Captain America, but otherwise, I just couldn't really see many new characters utilizing this one who couldn't just utilize another CTP as good, if not better. Speaking of better CTPs, in my opinion, energy doesn't need to be reforged to be good. And honestly, the reforging is not nearly as effective. So just give more CTPs to characters instead of reforging them. Sweet. As far as the list goes, it's just been crammed with tier 4s now. We have the introduction of Black Bolt, we have Captain America, and then we have Shuri sliding her way in there a little bit ahead of Miss Marvel, but otherwise the list remains quite stable. Why I put Jane Foster at the top is because she's the only she's the only normal cost universal female hero. So she's not better than Moon Knight or Black Widow or Cap or Shuri. You know, she would actually be 6th if you do it just by raw power. Black Bolt would be 1st, and basically Black Bolt and Jane Foster would switch places, okay? And maybe Shuri and Black Widow would switch places. I don't know, but you get what I'm saying. But it's not just about the raw power of the character, because it would just be a boring list with tier 4s at the top of everything. Here, you're trying to make Jane Foster work for you in lots of different content, where otherwise you would need to use a much more expensive character like Thena or Scarlet Witch. That's why she's number 1 for the CTP of energy. Hopefully that makes sense there. Then we come to the second last one. We have the CTP of regeneration. Honestly, like the CTP of destruction, I feel like this CTP is losing its power. I think it's mostly used now by high-end accounts for Alliance Conquest, where they're alternating between using the penetration reforge option or just having the attack and defense. And the issue here is there's just not enough characters that have enough HP to really make the HP shield work. That's part of the problem. Like, characters just do too much damage and they chew through the shield too quickly, and it basically just negates its effect. And also the penetration effect is not very good, right? Interrupting an attack with a 90% chance once every 8 seconds is just not very good. It's honestly not very good. On the brilliant one, it's every 7 seconds, but it's just not very good, because until those 7 seconds roll around again and you have another chance to penetrate, you can die. Right? And it's only a 90% chance. So there's still a 10% chance that you completely miss, which means that it has no effect whatsoever. And then you have to wait another 7 seconds. In that time, if you haven't done enough damage to kill them, you're probably dead. So yeah, I feel like the CTP is slipping in terms of value. Authority is just better for defenses and tanking. And then you have other options like Greed slipping in here, or sort of Refinement, which is adding a lot of HP and healing. The thing is that this has very little healing compared to the Egg, right? So that's kind of the issue. But anyways, as far as the list goes, it's almost identical as it was before, with Hulk and Thanos at the top. I just added in Captain America to the list because he just has a ton of HP. So that shield representing, 35% of his HP is just a massive shield. It's like over 100k extra damage that he can absorb. But yeah, I feel like the CTP is definitely slipping in the ranking of overall CTPs. And then we come to the best CTP in the game. Surprise, surprise, the CTP of Rage. It's probably still the best CTP in the game, even if you don't reforge. It's just absolutely nutty, and it's essentially a requirement for ABX, ABL, and GBR if you want to play at the highest level. So hard to argue with this CTP. Also very good for farming, because your characters don't have to follow a set skill rotation when they're playing on auto, because you can't manually set their skill rotation. As far as the list goes, it's basically just all the tier 4s that are good. It's literally almost all tier 4s, right? 70% of this list is tier 4s, from Black Bolt down to Venom, and then we have a couple of ABX holdouts like Loki, Titania, and Shuri. And Shuri also doubles for ABL as a really good alternative to Black Widow. But yeah, what can I say about the CTP of Rage? It was the best CTP when it came out. It lost it lost a lot of points when they introduced reforging, and it sort of faded into obscurity. But now it's back, baby. And that's just the way things go. It's all a cycle of the same 5 things. So yeah, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of this ranking of the top 10 characters for each CTP. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button. Consider being a member down below in the description. Wow. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.